Come and join me in a journey to learn more about Project Success for the Lost Boys of South Sudan in its desire to bring hope to a people who have suffered so much. Nestled between Central African Republic and Ethiopia, South Sudan is one of Africa's most diverse and culturally rich nations, with a population of about 12 million people and more than 60 major ethnic groups. It is also the world's youngest nation, but this young country has had a past filled with war, droughts, famines, diseases, and recently flooding. Project Success for the Lost Boys will bring hope to the children in a displacement camp in South Sudan in the form of education and help to the community. Many of the Lost Boys of Sudan have worked to bring help to their homeland by building clinics where none existed and orphanages for the thousands of children across the country. Project Success seeks to work with the community in the displacement camp to provide education for the children who have lost the opportunity because of COVID and because of the floods that have destroyed their schools. Project Success stands for Support, Unifying Community Commitment to Educate South Sudan. Our story begins with the Lost Boys of Sudan. South Sudan once was a part of Sudan, has had a very violent past. Foreign powers denied it its freedoms, but once it gained its independence in 1956, the country was embroiled in political unrest for decades. In 1983, when the Sudanese government imposed Sharia law, southern Sudan tribes rebelled and started a civil war. It was during this time that the young boys all over the country fled to escape being killed or being put into the army as child soldiers. In 1983, boys as young as 5 years old and from all over the country fled the civil war. Some traveled east to Ethiopia, and some traveled south, fleeing the enemy. Their homes were burned and family members killed. It is estimated that about 30,000 boys walked over 1,000 miles in search of safety. They were attacked by wild animals, hunted down by the enemy soldiers, and they lacked food, water, and shelter. Many died of diseases along the way. After about 6 years, their journey ended in a large refugee camp in Kenya. The United Nations aid workers said they were the most traumatized youth they had ever interviewed. In 2001, the United States started resettling about 4,000 of the Lost Boys. One of those Lost Boys was a 15-year-old who could hardly speak English and who had lost both of his parents in the Civil War. Jacob Atem was resettled in Michigan and took full advantage of the educational opportunities the United States provided him, getting his PhD and doing postdoctorate work at Johns Hopkins University. In 2008, he co-founded his nonprofit, the Southern Sudan Healthcare Organization, with another lost boy, and raised money to build a clinic in his home village of Mar in South Sudan. He wanted to help his people, who he knew faced many challenges. In 2005, Sudan finally agreed to a peace agreement, and 6 years later, South Sudanese people voted to become an independent country. South Sudan became the world's newest country. Jacob's clinic was built in 2011. In 2013, he and his wife went back to South Sudan. When they landed in the country, things were tense. By the time Jacob traveled halfway to the clinic, a civil war broke out in the country between rival tribes. Jacob's wife, realizing the grave danger her husband was in, called the U.S. Embassy, U.S. State Department, and the Pentagon to get help. Jacob was caught in the middle of this violence. His wife's efforts and prayers of many friends paid off. The United States sent a military helicopter to rescue him. A few years later, a fragile peace agreement was signed. The following year, the country was given another severe blow. Historic rainfalls flooded half the country. The following year, dikes all over the eastern part of the country broke, and thousands of people had to flee to displacement camps. It is hard to imagine how one small country could deal with so many major challenges. Jacob's clinic was surrounded by water, and other clinics had to be abandoned. The SSHCO staff was the first to arrive at the displacement camp to start providing medical help to the 40,000 people. They lacked clean water, food, shelter, and help from the outside. SSHCO distributed 35,000 mosquito nets to the families. In flooded South Sudan, malaria is the deadly killer. As soon as the clinic got established, I began making plans to build a school for the children in the camp. I collected school supplies, printed books, did research on what the educational system was like, and contacted the Ministry of Education. SSHCO's mission is simple but powerful in its effect, bringing health, education, and hope to where it is lost. The people in South Sudan have lost everything because of the flooding. It will be many, many years before they are even able to return home. Project Success is part of the education pillar for SSHCO, but it will do much more than just help with education. It will be part of most of the other pillars as well. In February of 2022, an education center was built in the displacement camp. The goal is to build classrooms for 7 more primary classes. I met Jacob through emails I was sending to others in South Sudan when I was working on providing some agricultural training for a village. When he realized that I lived in Columbus, Ohio, he arranged having lunch with me and my husband. I was so excited to find out that his nonprofit also focused on agriculture and education. I shared how I had been working with a school close to his clinic in South Sudan. As we talked, I realized that this was someone I could partner with to help the people in his homeland. 98,000 people now call Mongala displacement camp their home. There are several tribes represented and many villages in various parts of the flooded states. But what impressed me most is how quickly they formed communities and had their chiefs and leaders establish order and peace in this diverse new city, for that is what it is becoming. One of the first structures that was built was a church. Though it was huge, on the first Sunday there were hundreds who could not fit into this church. Their faith is strong, and you don't hear them complaining about the difficult challenges they face each day. Another important priority for people was to have schools for their children. There were a few schools like this in the camp. Although this school lacks a real building, supplies, or even seats for the students or even teachers, the children still come and must sit on tin cans or outside in the intense heat. There was no school in the area that SSHCO is operating its clinic for over a year. Then in 2022, a one-room education center was constructed. Project Success's goal is to bring hope to these children in this part of the displacement camp through education. The community knows that education will bring them a brighter future and open doors to many opportunities. Jacob took a group of people to South Sudan in early 2022. Although the school was not finished, I wanted Jacob to dedicate the school while he was there. There were over 160 people, the camp chairman, chiefs, community leaders, who were present for this wonderful event. I was able to witness the ceremony that morning via Zoom. Here is the finished school with solar panels on the roof. It is one of the few schools in the whole country with electricity. Here are the teachers, all with smiling faces, because they realize what an amazing opportunity they have to teach in this school with technology they have never seen or used before. They tell me that the children love their math lessons projected on the wall and coming up to answer the questions. They also enjoy seeing the many African stories. I imagine this is the only primary school in the whole country of South Sudan with this kind of technology. I did a professional development Zoom with the teachers on how to use the equipment and about all the lessons that I had loaded on the equipment. I'm very proud of how quickly they learned to set up the equipment and start using it with their students. Here is the first primary students. Half of them are girls. I imagine that is why the girls are smiling. There were so many children that wanted to attend the school, but sadly we could only accept 50. This is why we need to build more classrooms. Since the school in the displacement camp does not have electricity or internet, I contacted a company in Singapore called Papatus, which specializes in providing innovative technology that will help teachers provide lessons to large groups of children and connect them to other educational sites like Khan Academy math lessons. I've written literacy lessons that will be able to be shown to the students on this equipment. The technology has an LED projector, solar panels, Raspberry Pi, and other equipment that will allow us to provide instruction in unique and exciting ways. The school will be using South Sudan curriculum and the textbooks for these subjects you see. The South Sudan Ministry of Education has done a nice job with these subjects, but there were no literacy textbooks or lessons. Teachers have very little training on how to teach reading or writing. The literacy rate in South Sudan is below 30%, and the dropout rate for primary grades is 70%. There are many reasons for this. We know that when children struggle in school and don't have the good instruction in literacy, they may get discouraged. In South Sudan, this may mean children just drop out of school altogether. I wrote literacy lesson for the primary teachers. The one-day training in reading that is provided by the government for the teachers, we know is not enough to give a teacher confidence in teaching reading or writing. There were no books provided for students to read either. My lessons provide for phonemic awareness instruction and using phonics in writing. Step-by-step instructions in how to write a simple sentence is provided. Each lesson focuses on learning high-frequency words in a story that supports students and introduces vocabulary in the context of a story that mirrors their lives with photos from South Sudanese children. The level of the story and skills taught increases with each lesson. Each lesson ends with a read aloud that demonstrates fluent reading and comprehension. The stories are culturally appropriate and from the African Storybook collection. Students will be selected from each PIAM or community that the school will serve. Each community will select students and half of them need to be girls. A female teacher with proper certification will be hired and a community coordinator selected to encourage community involvement with the education center. Our agriculture expert that I have worked with for several years will help establish a school garden and teach the students how to plant vegetables and care for them. Women will also be given vegetable seeds and taught how to grow them. The plan is for them to have enough for their families and have some left over to sell. This will help support them and their families with other basic needs. Another goal of Project Success is to create businesses for women. One business Project Success will encourage is a tailoring business. Since school uniforms are the norm for schools in South Sudan, we will be hiring several women in the camp to make the uniforms for the students. Our school logo will be stamped on all the shirts. These businesses and others that will be started will help women become self-reliant and providing a sustainable future for their families. The children in South Sudan deserve the opportunity for an education that can open doors for their futures and for their country. The Lost Boys were relocated to the United States, have gone on to become doctors, university professors, teachers, and have joined our military. Many have started their own nonprofits like Jacob to become part of the solution in making their homeland secure and successful for its citizens.